Amelia Brown awoke the morning of her anticipated swearing-in with a flutter of excitement. Sunlight filtered through the blinds of her Brookhaven townhouse as she dressed in a tailored navy suit, laid out precisely the night before. Today, she would stand in the marble-paneled hall of the Fulton County Superior Court and take the oath as its newest Superior Court judge, a historic milestone as the county's first black female appointee. Her career had been marked by unyielding dedication, a decade as a federal public defender, clerkships under esteemed appellate jurists, and hundreds of successful motions arguing for justice and equity. By 8 a.m., Amelia arrived at the State Bar headquarters to collect her commission packet. The reception area buzzed with reporters and well-wishers. Banners outside read, "Congratulations, Judge-Designate Brown." She stepped into Committee Room 2B with a portfolio in hand, confident she had fulfilled every requirement. The bar's staff had reviewed her character, fitness, and legal scholarship. Unanimous endorsement from the nominating commission and the governor's signature minutes ago completed the process. But when the 5-member ethics panel called her forward, the room's congenial atmosphere turned icy. The committee chair, Senior Counsel Bertrand, broke the news with clinical detachment. "Ms. Brown, your 2019 annual financial disclosure was filed 1 day late, April 15th instead of April 14th. Under Bar Rule 4C, this constitutes an ethics violation, mandating a stay of your commission until a full review." Amelia's heart seized. She reached for her copy of the filed receipt, time-stamped 8:37 a.m. on April 15th. But Bertrand dismissed it with a curt wave. "Deadlines are absolute," he intoned. "No exceptions." The remaining panel members exchanged sympathetic yet rigid expressions. She tried to explain. It was a clerical oversight, a calendar misread during back-to-back case deadlines. But the chair offered no leniency. "Rule 4C leaves no room for good faith," he said. "We must stay your commission until an ethics hearing determines any consequences." The stunned silence that followed felt endless. Amelia's carefully built reputation, her years of pro bono work, her mentoring of young attorneys, her unblemished disciplinary record, mattered not at this moment. Reporters in the hallway caught wind of the abrupt cancellation. Digital headlines flashed, "Historic judgeship delayed over ethics slip." Social media exploded with snark and doubt. "Can't even manage a form," and "rules are rules," casting her integrity into question. By evening, she returned home to an inbox flooded with messages, some encouraging, many more uncertain. Her husband David held her as she wept, promising they would fight this. Alone later in her study, Amelia surrounded herself with proof of her excellence: case briefs, commendation letters, thank you notes from clients she had defended. She placed her grandmother's pearl earrings, symbols of her family's legacy, beside the missed deadline receipt. In the hush of her library, Amelia made a vow. She would not let one administrative error derail her life's work. She would expose the discriminatory enforcement behind Rule 4C, rally her colleagues, and wage every legal battle to compel the bar to process her commission. That night, as the Atlanta skyline glowed in the distance, Amelia Brown transformed devastation into determination, and the fight for her rightful place on the bench had truly begun. The morning after her commission was stayed, Amelia Brown returned to her office beneath the hum of fluorescent lights and the scent of old law books. The sting of her ethics panel's decision still burned, but she knew that to win, she needed evidence far beyond her own clean record. She opened the Georgia Bar's online disciplinary database and began cataloging every instance of Rule 4C enforcement since 2010. Line by line, she recorded 63 late filing disclosures: the attorney's name, date of tardiness, demographic details, and the sanction imposed. Attorneys whose filings were weeks late, white male partners at major firms, had received mere private advisories or cure waivers, quietly advised to resubmit without public notice. In stark contrast, every woman of color whose disclosure was even a single day late had faced a public stay of her commission. Amelia built a color-coded spreadsheet: green for waivers, yellow for private letters, and red for stays. The pattern leapt from the screen. 0% of white men stayed. Nearly 100% of black and Latina attorneys stayed. Her pulse quickened. She cross-referenced the names against the bar's demographic report and confirmed the disparity. Of the 12 stays recorded, 10 targeted attorneys of color. She drafted an email to Judge Evelyn Carter, her mentor, requesting anonymized case notes from past ethics panels. Carter replied within the hour, offering sworn recollections of informal good cause exceptions routinely granted behind closed doors. Those exceptions vanished whenever a woman of color stood before them. Next, Amelia contacted the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys, sharing her findings and enlisting their help to collect personal affidavits from members who had quietly endured reprimands. Within 2 days, 10 attorneys of color provided sworn statements, some recounting hushed phone calls from ethics staff, others describing the professional humiliation of a public stay. With hard data and personal testimony in hand, Amelia drafted a letter to the bar's president, demanding an immediate review of Rule 4C's application and urgent relief of her suspension. She CC'd the State Civil Rights Division, framing her petition not merely as a personal appeal, but as a civil rights challenge to racially disparate enforcement. As twilight settled over Atlanta, Amelia sat surrounded by printed charts, sworn affidavits, and her own time-stamped filing receipt. The veil of neutral rules had been pierced, exposing a double standard rooted in bias. With each verified datum, her resolve sharpened. She would wield this evidence in court and in the public square, until the bar could no longer hide behind its supposed objectivity. The battle for equal application of the law was poised to begin in earnest. By Monday morning, Amelia's spreadsheet of disparate sanctions had grown into a clarion call. She began her day drafting personal letters to key stakeholders: the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys, GABWA, the Atlanta Bar Diversity Initiative, and the Southern Center for Civil Rights. Each letter outlined her statistical findings: the 0% waiver rate for white male attorneys versus 100% stay rate for women of color, and invited these groups to join her legal battle. On Wednesday afternoon, Amelia convened her first coalition meeting in GABWA's polished conference room. 20 prominent black women attorneys, partners at top firms, law professors, and nonprofit litigators circled a long mahogany table. Amelia presented her color-coded spreadsheet, projecting bar graphs showing 12 stays since 2010, 10 of which targeted attorneys of color. The room fell silent as the data sank in. Muriel Jackson, GABWA's president, leaned forward. "We must supply first-hand accounts. I'll mobilize our membership to draft sworn declarations by week's end." Meanwhile, 2 research analysts from the Atlanta Bar Diversity Initiative, Mark Nguyen and Priya Desai, dug deeper into the bar's archives. Over 3 late-night sessions in the initiative's library, they extracted 63 disciplinary files dating back a decade, coded each by race and sanction, and prepared a 50-page statistical appendix. Their analysis not only confirmed Amelia's figures, but revealed a disturbing trend. Black attorneys were twice as likely to be publicly disciplined for any ethics infraction, however minor. On Friday, Amelia met with Jamal Wright of the Southern Center for Civil Rights in his modest Peachtree Street office. Wright, famed for high-impact civil rights litigation, reviewed her legal strategy: a state court mandamus petition to compel her commission, paired with a federal Title VII complaint alleging selective enforcement based on race. He agreed to draft the federal complaint, charging the state bar with equal protection violations and seeking injunctive relief to prevent further stays against similarly situated attorneys. By Saturday morning, Amelia's inbox overflowed with 10 notarized affidavits from Black and Latina attorneys recounting identical late-filing errors that had been quietly waived. Yet their own one-day delays had cost them public stays. That afternoon, she and her team assembled at her home office, layering the affidavits atop the statistical appendix, drafting a powerful coalition brief that wove personal narrative with empirical proof. As dusk fell, Amelia paused before the glowing Atlanta skyline, feeling the quiet strength of her newly formed coalition behind her. With Gabwa's voices, the Diversity Initiative's data, and the Southern Center's legal firepower, she was no longer fighting alone. Together, they would expose the bar's bias, restore her commission, and forge a precedent that no ethics slip could ever again be weaponized against a lawyer of color. On a crisp Tuesday morning, the marble foyer of the Fulton County Superior Court buzzed with anticipation as journalists jostled for position and bar advocates took their seats. Amelia Brown arrived at courtroom 2B in a tailored black robe, her first time appearing as a petitioner rather than a candidate, flanked by Judge Evelyn Carter, GABWA, President Muriel Jackson, and civil rights attorney Jamal Wright. The five-judge panel, led by Chief Judge Solis, sat beneath the state seal, their benches gleaming under the high-arched skylights. Amelia began with unwavering poise. "May it please the court," she said, voice clear, "I seek a writ of mandamus compelling the state bar to process my Superior Court commission without delay." She clicked her remote to project Exhibit A, the bar's Rule 4C text, and Exhibit B, her time-stamped filing receipt showing the one-day late disclosure. She transitioned smoothly to the heart of her argument: selective enforcement. Clicking to Exhibit C, she displayed her coalition's color-coded chart: 63 late filing cases since 2010, 0 public stays for white men, and a 100% stay rate for women of color. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Chief Judge Solis leaned forward. "Counsel, can you cite a single instance where the bar denied a waiver to a white male attorney?" Amelia nodded and introduced Exhibit D, an affidavit from a former ethics panelist testifying that good cause waivers were routinely granted until they reached a minority attorney. Bar counsel Gregory Whitman rose to defend the rule's strict neutrality, insisting deadlines are absolute. Judge Vargas interjected, "Counsel, how does the bar justify waivers in practice?" Whitman hesitated, scanning his notes, then faltered. At that moment, Amelia summoned Professor Laura Mendoza to the stand. Mendoza, a leading scholar on implicit bias, explained how neutral rules routinely inflict disparate impact on outgroup members, citing peer-reviewed studies and Georgia-specific data. As the morning wore on, Amelia's team chained each point: statistical proof of bias, first-hand affidavits of partiality, expert testimony on discrimination, and a constitutional mandate for equal protection. When she closed, Amelia fixed the judges with steady eyes. This court cannot permit statutes or rules to be enforced as tools of exclusion. A writ of mandamus is both appropriate and necessary to uphold the rule of law. After a hush that stretched to the courtroom's oak panels, Chief Judge Solis delivered the bench's unanimous opinion. "We find that the state bar's application of Rule 4C to Ms. Brown, absent the equitable considerations routinely granted to others, was arbitrary, capricious, and in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. The writ of mandamus is granted. The bar is ordered to issue Ms. Brown's commission within 5 business days." A wave of relief and triumph rippled through Amelia's supporters. Cameras flashed as Judge Carter embraced her, and GABWA members wept quietly. Even Bar Counsel Whitman offered a respectful nod. As Amelia stepped down, the chant of "Justice" echoed softly, a testament not just to her victory, but to the broader triumph of equity over entrenched bias. 2 weeks after the Superior Court's mandamus order, Amelia Brown prepared to take her fight to the Georgia Court of Appeals. On a crisp Thursday morning, she entered the grand atrium of the appellate courthouse, flanked by Judge Evelyn Carter, civil rights attorney Jamal Wright, and 2 GABWA representatives clutching their coalition affidavits. The 3-judge panel, Judges Arrington, Bowman, and Carter, no relation, presided from elevated oak benches, their robes folding like midnight shadows. Amelia began by revisiting the Superior Court's findings: the bar's zero-tolerance enforcement of Rule 4C against women of color, and the stark contrast with routine waivers granted to white male attorneys under identical or worse circumstances. She emphasized the Administrative Procedure Act's prohibition against arbitrary and capricious agency action, arguing that the bar's selective application had flouted both its own cure provision and fundamental principles of fairness. Pulling up Exhibit F, Amelia displayed a timeline showing how 8 other attorneys, 7 women of color and 1 Latino man, had their commissions stayed for 1 day late filings, only to be reinstated quietly after her Superior Court victory made the bar's bias undeniable. If the bar can cure other stays on the eve of public exposure, she told the panel, it must do the same for me, whose only fault was shining a light on their unequal practices. Bar counsel countered that the Superior Court had overstepped its authority, insisting the appellate court should defer to the bar's expert judgment. Amelia politely cited Exhibit G, a letter from the State Attorney General's office acknowledging the bar's discretionary cure power and urging consistency in its exercise. She punctuated her rebuttal by calling Professor Mendoza back to the stand to testify on the constitutional imperative of equal protection when administrative rules carry the force of law. After 2 days of rigorous argument, the appellate judges retired to consider. Word of the impending decision sent ripples through the legal community. Would the bar's veneer of impartiality endure? Or would Georgia's attorneys of color finally receive the equal treatment their white peers had long taken for granted? On a clear autumn afternoon, Amelia returned to the courthouse steps as the Court of Appeals announced its per curiam decision. We find that the Superior Court correctly identified the bar's arbitrary enforcement of Rule 4C. The stay of Ms. Brown's Superior Court commission is vacated, and the bar is directed to issue her commission no later than 5 business days from the date of this opinion. A swell of triumph washed over Amelia as applause broke out among her supporters in the gallery. Cameras flashed, and reporters clamored for her comment. Amelia stepped forward, her voice steady. Today, the Court of Appeals affirmed that rules cannot be wielded as weapons against those they were never intended to harm. I am honored to finally serve my community from the bench, and to know that our work has strengthened the integrity of Georgia's legal system. With her commission fully restored, Amelia Brown stood not merely vindicated, but empowered, her victory echoing as a clarion call that no procedural misstep, however minor, may be used to conceal systemic bias. Months after reclaiming her commission, Judge Amelia Brown found herself back in courtroom 1A of the Georgia Supreme Court, this time as the appellant arguing Jackson v. State, a test case she had solicited to dismantle State v. Henderson, the 1987 doctrine that had enabled racially biased pretextual stops. The narrow room, its wood paneling dark and gleaming, was packed. Defense attorneys, civil rights activists, and journalists filled every seat. On the bench sat the 7 justices, their black robes eclipsing the state seal behind them. Amelia stepped forward in her judicial robe, shoulders squared. She began, Chief Justice Bell, Associate Justices Marquez, Feldman, Liu, Thompson, and Nguyen. Henderson permits officers to extend a lawful traffic stop for investigative purposes, unrelated to the original stop, a practice this court recognized without guardrails. Today, we ask you to acknowledge that Henderson stands in irreconcilable conflict with Rodriguez v. United States and the Fourth Amendment. She advanced to her first exhibit, a map of Fulton County showing pretextual stop saturation zones, where Henderson had been applied over 3,200 times in the past 5 years. Black drivers stopped at nearly 4 times the rate of white drivers. A murmur rippled through the gallery as she connected these statistics to constitutional principle. When neutrality is optional, bias becomes inevitable. Next, she dissected Henderson's origins, a teen's minor traffic infraction ballooning into a contraband search, juxtaposing it with Rodriguez's clear mandate that the authority for the seizure ends when tasks tied to the traffic stop are, or reasonably should have been, completed. She played audio from her own suppression hearing, where she found the officer in Jackson admitted he had no articulated suspicion beyond a broken taillight, yet kept Mr. Jackson off the road 30 extra minutes to investigate an unrelated tip. Opposing counsel argued that Henderson was settled law, cautioning that overruling it would unsettle hundreds of convictions. Amelia countered with judicial precedent. Our duty is not to perpetuate error, but to correct it. Courts routinely revisit their own decisions when higher authority or evolving understanding demands it. She reminded the court that Georgia's constitution, like its federal counterpart, guards against the arbitrary power of the state. After 2 grueling days of argument, the justices retired. Upon resuming, Chief Justice Bell delivered a landmark opinion. We hold that State versus Henderson is overruled, where the United States Supreme Court has clarified that traffic stops cannot be extended beyond their mission. This court must follow suit. Law enforcement may not rely on Henderson's investigative exception to prolong a stop without independent suspicion. All lower courts are directed to apply Fourth Amendment protections consistent with Rodriguez, and this opinion, effective immediately. The courtroom erupted in applause. Amelia felt tears sting her eyes as the gavel fell. Outside, a sea of supporters cheered on the Capitol steps, waving signs reading, "Ends profiling," and "Justice for all." News chyrons ran, "Georgia Supreme Court ends racial profiling stop rule." That evening, back in her chambers, Amelia pinned the written opinion beside her bench plaque, its ink still fresh. She reflected on the journey, from the humiliation of an ethics slip stay to overthrowing a doctrine that had sanctioned biased policing. In that victory lay the culmination of her fight, not just to serve on the bench, but to ensure that every Georgian's rights would be guarded equally under the law. On a crisp winter morning, the grand rotunda of the Fulton County Superior Court brimmed with anticipation. Marble pillars rose like sentinels above a crowd of dignitaries, colleagues, community leaders, and law student interns, all gathered to witness Amelia Brown's formal investiture. Banners emblazoned with "Judge Amelia Brown, Equal Justice Under Law," fluttered in the soft breeze wafting through open doors. Inside courtroom 2B, where just months earlier she had battled for her own commission, Amelia took the center bench in her flowing black robe, silver ginkgo leaf trim catching the light. Chief Judge Solis administered the oath. "Do you, Amelia Brown, solemnly swear to administer justice without respect to persons, and to do equal right to the poor and to the rich, and to faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of Superior Court Judge?" Amelia placed her hand on the family Bible, her grandmother's pearls draped over the cover, and answered clearly, "I do." A wave of applause rippled through the packed courtroom, echoing off the carved oak panels. Tears glistened in Judge Carter's eyes as she stepped forward to embrace her protege. That afternoon, Judge Brown held her first open docket, a public session welcoming self-represented litigants, attorneys, and community observers. She began with a brief address. "This bench stands as a beacon of fairness. Here, every voice is heard, every case weighed equally, and every person treated with dignity." She then launched 3 signature initiatives: bench and bar dialogues, quarterly roundtables, convening prosecutors, defenders, and community advocates to discuss policing practices, sentencing disparities, and pathways for reform, law and action school visits, monthly programs bringing high school students into her courtroom for mock trials, Q&A panels, and mentorship aimed at demystifying the justice system, annual case review clinic, an invitation for any defendant whose conviction arose from a Henderson-style stop to petition for rehearing under the new Rodriguez standard, ensuring past injustices are not left unaddressed. Later that year, a vibrant mural was unveiled in the courthouse atrium. Amelia's likeness as Lady Justice, blindfolded yet raising the scales high, beneath the inscription, "Justice requires courage." Community members, young and old, Black, white, and Latinx, gathered to celebrate, sharing stories of how her tenacity had reshaped their lives and the law itself. As dusk settled over Atlanta, Judge Brown stood alone on the courthouse steps, gazing at the mural illuminated by soft uplights. She ran her hand across its cool brick, recalling every trial, the ethics hearing that threatened her career, the coalition that rallied to her cause, the appellate victories, and the Supreme Court triumph. In that moment, Amelia Brown understood her journey had done more than restore one commission. It had forged a living legacy of equality that would guide Georgia's courts for generations to come.